When truth starts to crumble, even justice can't hold it together. Episode 8 of Reasonable Doubt Season 3 isn't just another courtroom drama, it's a war between guilt, loyalty, and the haunting weight of choices that refuse to die quietly. This episode doesn't just ask who's guilty, it asks who's good. And by the end, you'll realize that in Jax Stewart's world, there's no such thing as clean hands, only clean lies. The episode opens with a tension so thick you could feel it pressing against your chest. Jax walks into another day pretending she's in control, but her eyes betray her. They're tired, haunted, the kind of eyes that have seen too much truth to ever trust it again. The city outside hums with life, but her world is silent chaos, every decision she's made echoing back at her. This isn't just about winning a case anymore. It's about surviving the wreckage of everything she's defended. We see the cracks widening between Jax and the people closest to her. Friends become strangers, and enemies start to sound almost honest. The line between justice and vengeance blurs with every scene. You can feel it, the slow unraveling of a woman who has spent too long hiding behind her brilliance. Each courtroom victory feels emptier than the last. Each confession sounds like a curse whispered in her ear. She's not just fighting for her client anymore. She's fighting for the last shred of herself that still believes in right and wrong. Then comes the turning moment. The case she's working on takes a dark twist. Evidence surfaces that changes everything. What once looked like a clean-cut defense now reeks of betrayal. The law that once protected now feels like a trap closing in. The camera lingers on her face, capturing that flicker of disbelief the instant she realizes she's been played. Not by the system, not by her client, but by her own trust. That's when the episode stops being about the case and starts being about her soul. There's something poetic about watching someone so powerful crumble so quietly. The show doesn't scream its drama, it lets it bleed slowly, like a secret too painful to confess. The writing shines here, it doesn't rush to give answers. Instead, it lets you sit in the discomfort, forcing you to ask yourself, if you were in Jax's shoes, would you tell the truth? Or protect the lie that keeps you standing? By the end of the first act, everything feels heavier. The silence between conversations speaks louder than the words themselves. Every glance, every hesitation, every unspoken apology becomes a story of its own. This is what Reasonable Doubt does best. It reminds you that justice isn't blind. It just chooses what to see. Every character in episode 8 carries a mask, and this is where the story starts peeling them off one by one. On the surface, everything looks polished, the suits, the speeches, the courtroom confidence. But underneath, there's fear, resentment, and regret crawling in the shadows. What makes this episode so gripping isn't what people say, but what they don't. You start realizing that silence can be louder than truth, and a half smile can hide 1,000 lies. Jax, the heartbeat of the series, stands at the edge of breaking. For so long, she's been the voice of reason, the one who could twist the law to serve justice. But now the law feels like it's twisting her. Her brilliance, once her armor, is now her burden. Every victory she's ever won starts to look like a deal with the devil. You can almost feel the exhaustion in her words. Every argument sounds like she's trying to convince herself more than anyone else. Her confidence doesn't sparkle anymore. It trembles like a candle in a storm. And then there's Lewis. His presence this episode feels heavier, colder. You can see how the love they once had has turned into a battlefield of silent wars. There's still care there, buried deep under pride and disappointment, but it's poisoned by everything left unsaid. One scene between them, just a simple exchange of looks, says more than any confession could. You see it, two people who once fought for each other, now fighting not to blame each other. It's human, it's messy, and it's painfully real. Meanwhile, Damon moves like a ghost through Jax's world, unpredictable, dangerous, but heartbreakingly honest in his chaos. He represents the truth Jax can't admit, that sometimes destruction feels easier than healing. His every line feels like a challenge, a mirror reflecting what Jax refuses to see in herself. The chemistry between them isn't just romantic tension, it's psychological warfare. He's the storm she pretends to control, but deep down, she knows he's the only one who truly sees her. That's what makes their scenes electric. It's not love, it's recognition. Two broken souls finding comfort in each other's damage. The writing here deserves praise. It doesn't hand-feed the audience. Instead, it lets moments linger, a glance, a sigh, a pause too long to be casual. You're forced to read between the lines to feel what they can't say. Every character carries a secret, and episode 8 treats those secrets like ticking time bombs. You don't know when they'll go off, but you can sense the tremor in every interaction. The supporting cast also steps up in ways that quietly amplify the story. Chanel's loyalty feels strained, almost like she's watching a friend drown but can't decide whether to reach out or stay safe on the shore. The assistant's nervous glances, the judge's subtle bias, the client's slippery charm. All of it builds a web where everyone is pretending, performing, surviving. No one is innocent, not even the ones who act like they are. What stands out most in this section of the episode is the way morality gets twisted into something unrecognizable. The show doesn't offer heroes. It offers humans fragile, flawed, and fighting for air. You can't root for anyone completely because everyone has blood on their hands, even if it's just emotional. And that's the beauty of reasonable doubt. It forces you to question your own sense of right and wrong. You find yourself thinking, would I have done the same thing? And that's when the show wins, when it makes you uncomfortable with your own reflection. By the time this act closes, the energy feels like a storm brewing. Jax isn't just doubting her client, she's doubting herself, her choices, her beliefs. The people around her aren't allies or enemies anymore. They're mirrors, each one reflecting a version of her she doesn't want to face. The tension is no longer just in the courtroom. It's in her heartbeat, her silence, her inability to breathe freely. This section of episode 8 feels like a confession disguised as a drama. Everyone's pretending, but the truth is clawing its way out. The masks are cracking, and once they fall, there will be no going back. Truth. That's the word that keeps echoing through episode 8 like a haunting melody. Every frame, every word, every stare feels soaked in it, but not the kind of truth that sets you free. This truth hurts. It burns through the layers of pretense each character has built around themselves. And by this point, in reasonable doubt, truth isn't a revelation anymore. It's a punishment. This episode turns the idea of truth into a living, breathing character. It walks beside Jax like a shadow she can't escape. Every decision she's made, every lie she's told to protect someone, every compromise she's justified in the name of justice, they all start to close in. There's something tragic about watching a woman who once believed in the power of her words realize that words can destroy just as easily as they can defend. The courtroom feels less like a place of justice now and more like a confessional booth where everyone's sins are on display. What's fascinating about this episode is how it uses silence to speak louder than dialogue. The camera lingers just long enough to make you squirm. The lighting shifts from clarity to shadow, a visual metaphor for truth fading into doubt. Even the soundtrack hums with unease, a subtle reminder that honesty always comes with a cost. The writers know that showing is more powerful than telling, and they use that power to perfection here. You don't just watch Jax struggle, you feel her suffocating under the weight of what she knows. The theme of morality bleeds through every scene. This isn't a show about heroes or villains, it's about survivors. Every character is trying to do what they think is right, even when it's horribly wrong. Damon's honesty feels dangerous, almost intoxicating, because it's too raw. He doesn't hide behind laws or ethics. He embraces chaos as his truth. In contrast, Jax's truth is carefully constructed, neat, rational, dressed in professionalism, but crumbling fast. Their clash is more than emotional, it's philosophical. It's the eternal fight between the truth we want to believe and the truth we can't escape. The episode also toys with the idea of reasonable doubt itself, not just in the courtroom sense, but in the human one. Doubt becomes a disease spreading through every relationship. Can Jax trust her instincts anymore? Can Luz believe anything Jax says? Can Damon ever separate love from manipulation? The writing doesn't give easy answers. It leaves you dangling and sure, uncomfortable. And that's exactly the point. One of the most powerful scenes in this part of the episode involves Jax standing alone, looking at the evidence that could destroy someone's life. The camera holds on her for just a few seconds longer than expected. You see her hand tremble. You see the hesitation flicker in her eyes. She isn't weighing justice, she's weighing guilt. This single moment captures the soul of the episode, the unbearable pressure of being the one who decides whose truth matters. It's no longer about what's legal, it's about what's human. Then there's the symbolism scattered throughout, the mirrors, the reflections, the recurring shots of glass surfaces. Every reflection distorts slightly, reminding us that perception is never perfect. What we see is never the full story. Even the recurring color palette, deep shadows mixed with muted golds, mirrors Jax's duality, her brilliance and her burden. Every scene feels like it's drenched in guilt and gold at the same time. The title of the show itself, Reasonable Doubt, takes on new meaning in this episode. It's not just about convincing a jury anymore. It's about convincing yourself that the choices you've made are justified. It's about living with the haunting question, what if I'm wrong? And that question is the beating heart of episode 8, the writing, direction. And performances all revolve around this one silent terror, the fear that truth might destroy everything you've built up by this point. The audience isn't watching a legal thriller anymore. They're watching an unraveling of beliefs, of morals, of masks. The story asks something deeply uncomfortable. Is it better to live with a comforting lie or die knowing the truth? And every scene edges closer to that answer, though none of the characters are ready to face it yet. As the episode pushes forward, it's clear that no one is safe from exposure. The truth isn't coming, it's already here, quietly spreading through every glance, every broken promise, every sleepless night. And when it finally explodes, it won't just break cases. It'll break people. Episode 8 doesn't just show the weight of truth. It makes you carry it with the characters. You leave the scene feeling heavy, uncertain, haunted exactly the way great storytelling should leave you. When the truth finally shatters, it doesn't explode, it sinks in, slow and cold, like water filling a drowning room. Episode 8 reaches that suffocating silence where every lie has been exposed, and all that's left are the raw nerves of consequence. This is the kind of ending that doesn't need shouting or gunfire. It hurts more quietly. Every expression, every pause carries the weight of everything that can't be fixed anymore. You can almost feel the exhaustion leaking from the screen, the kind of exhaustion that doesn't come from fighting others, but from fighting yourself for too long. Jax sits in the wreckage of her own decisions. The courtroom is gone now, but her mind is still on trial. Every truth she's uncovered has cost her something she can't get back. She's lost control of the narrative, the power she once held over facts, over perception, over people. It's all slipping through her fingers. And that's the real tragedy. Watching someone who could outthink anyone else finally realize she can't outthink her own guilt. Her strength was never her intellect. It was her belief in her own moral compass. But now, that compass is spinning wild, and she doesn't know which direction leads to redemption anymore. There's a haunting beauty in how this episode slows down here. The camera doesn't chase action. It lingers. It forces you to watch her sit in silence, to breathe the same heavy air she's choking on. The world doesn't fall apart dramatically. It just goes quiet. That's how truth works in real life. It doesn't crash down like thunder. It just stops pretending to be a cloud. The relationships that defined her, Lewis, Damon, her colleagues, all look at her differently now. Some with pity, some with disappointment, some with the cold satisfaction of being proven right. But none of them truly see her anymore. That's the punishment of truth. Once you expose it, you're left alone with it. The storytelling brilliance of Reasonable Doubt lies in that loneliness. It reminds you that justice doesn't promise peace, it only demands payment. And everyone pays, in one way or another. Lewis pays with his love. Damon pays with his freedom. Jax pays with her soul. You start to realize that in this world, victory doesn't mean you win. It just means you lose differently. The cinematography in this final stretch tells its own story. Notice how the colors fade, warm tones replaced by colder hues. The city lights outside feel dimmer, like even the world around her is tired. There's no more fiery dialogue, no more passionate defense speeches. The episode ends in whispers, papers scattered on a desk, a phone that keeps lighting up but never gets answered. These small details speak louder than any verdict ever could. And then, just when you think the tension is over, the show delivers one last blow, a quiet revelation. Something small but powerful enough to flip everything you thought you knew. It's not a twist for shock value. It's a reminder that truth isn't a finish line. It's a revolving door. What you find today can change everything tomorrow. The ending doesn't give closure. It gives unease. You sit there, watching the credits roll, wondering what's real anymore. Thematically, episode 8 closes the loop beautifully. The title Reasonable Doubt doesn't just describe the courtroom. It describes the human condition. We live doubting our choices, doubting the people we trust, doubting whether we're good or just pretending to be. This episode forces that confrontation. It strips every character of their excuses until they're left standing naked in their own contradictions. And that's what makes it art. It doesn't give you answers. It gives you reflection. As the music fades, you realize this story was never about proving who's innocent. It's about accepting that everyone's guilty of something, of silence, of denial, of love that came too late. That's what makes Reasonable Doubt so powerful. It doesn't judge its characters. It understands them. It shows that being human means making the wrong choice, even when you think it's right. When the screen fades to black, it leaves behind a question that lingers like smoke. What does justice even mean when your heart and your mind don't agree? And that's the brilliance of this episode. It doesn't end. It stays with you, whispering in the back of your thoughts long after the credits stop rolling. Because the real verdict isn't in the courtroom. It's in the mirror.